Today I want to share with you some of our family favorite Easter baking traditions, one of which includes the best hot cross buns you've ever had. Hi sweet friends, I'm Mary from marysnest.com and author of the Modern Pioneer Cookbook, and welcome to my kitchen. Alrighty, let's get started baking. When I was growing up, my mother always served hot cross buns on Good Friday with our evening dinner. And today I want to share with you a recipe that involves using sourdough starter. You're going to need to use 2 cups of sourdough starter, and you're going to want to make sure that you've fed your sourdough starter the night before. And the sourdough starter I'm using is what's called a 100% hydration starter, meaning that when I feed my sourdough starter, I feed it with equal amounts of flour as I do water. So I just wanted to let you know for this recipe, you want your sourdough starter that you're using, the 2 cups, to be one that's a 100% hydrated sourdough starter. So in my stand mixer, I've got 2 cups of my sourdough starter. Now I'm doing this in a stand mixer, but you can certainly mix this by hand. It's just the mixer does make a little quicker work of it. Now to my starter, I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of sugar, and this is just a white organic sugar. And I've got the zest of 2 oranges. Now I had 2 medium-sized oranges. If you have a large orange, that'll do 2. And you're going to want to save the juice and put that aside because we're going to use that mixed with honey later to glaze the rolls. So then I'm just going to go ahead and add this zest right in like that. Then I've got 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. I've got a half a teaspoon of cloves and a half a teaspoon of allspice. Now the spices for hot cross buns is really flexible. Some people will add cardamom, some people will also add nutmeg. It's really your choice and what you like. So I'll go ahead and add these spices in. Now to this, you're going to want to add 2 eggs and a 1/4 cup of honey. I've got a dark honey here. You can use any kind of honey you want. And I'm just going to beat these eggs with the honey ever so slightly, and then we'll get ready to add the rest of the ingredients to this. Now to the honey and egg mixture, we're going to go ahead and add in 1 cup of milk. And we're also going to add in 1 cup of water. And then we'll just give this a little mix to get everything incorporated. And then we're going to go ahead and add this right into our sourdough mixture. I'm just going to attach my dough whisk now because that's what we're going to need for this. And we're just going to give this a little quick whirl around just to get everything incorporated. Now I've got 7 cups of all-purpose flour here. Some of you may know it as plain flour. And I'm just going to start incorporating this little by little. What we're wanting is a very sticky dough. So I'm just going to start this on low so the flour doesn't fly everywhere, and we'll start incorporating these 7 cups of flour. Well, that just took a few minutes, and halfway through I stopped the mixer and pulled the dough down to make sure that everything would be thoroughly incorporated. Now I'm going to let this rest for 20 minutes, and then we'll come back and add in the rest of the ingredients. And as I let this rest for 20 minutes, I'm going to just give it a little cover here to keep it warm. And now I'm going to add in the salt. And then after that, I'm going to add in the dried fruit. Now, I've got 1.5 cups of currants here. And this was a teaspoon of salt. And that's just unrefined sea salt that I'm using. And here I've got 1/2 cup of dried fruit. I'm using currants, as I said. Now, you can use any dried fruit you want. You can use raisins, dried cherries, cranberries, anything. I think raisins and currants are kind of traditional. Also adding in citron is traditional, but I don't have any. But that's the candied citrus peel. That's delightful. So if you have any of that, you can certainly add in the citron as well. And you just want 1.5 cups. So I'm just going to add in that dried fruit, and then we'll give this a mix just to incorporate. Now I just want to mention about working with sourdough starter. If you're worried that your final baked good may have a little bit of a sour taste to it, you can always add in, especially if you're new to serving sourdough to yourself or to your family or whatever the case may be, your friends, and you're worried that it may have a little too much of that sourdough flavor, you can always add in about 1 teaspoon or so of baking soda, and you do it at this point. And that's something that James Beard, the famous cookbook author and chef, would write about in his book on bread, that if you add in 1 teaspoon or so of baking soda, that'll help counteract the sourness of the sourdough. So that's just a little tip in case you're worried about working with sourdough and it having that sour flavor. But in any event, alrighty, we'll get ready to mix in this fruit and salt, and then we'll go on to the next step. Okay, I've got the salt and the currants incorporated, and now I'm going to add in 4 tablespoons of softened butter. And then I'm going to knead this all together for about 10 minutes with the mixer, and if you're hand kneading, about 20 minutes. Well, I kneaded the dough in the mixer for about 10 minutes, and it's all set, looking beautiful. And I'm going to put it now in an oiled bowl, and then I'm going to cover it, keep it in a warm place, and let it rest for an hour. Well, I let the dough rise for an hour, and now what I'm going to do is take this out and put it on a floured board. I floured my hands, and we'll just take this and punch it down, and we're going to put it on the board, and we're going to divide it into 24 pieces. Alrighty, well now I got this onto the board, well floured, because this is a bit of a sticky dough. And I'm going to cut it in half like this, and then I'm going to cut each one of these pieces in half again. And basically what I want to do is keep cutting them into pieces until I get 24 even pieces. Well, I've got them divided up into 24 pieces, and we're just eyeballing it today. If you have a food scale, it makes it very easy and you can get them exact, but we're going old school today. So I've got a 9 by 13 baking dish here, and I've buttered it. Now, if you don't have a baking dish this size, don't worry. You can just use a sheet pan and butter it, or put down some parchment paper, and that'll work fine too. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take each little piece that we've got of the 24 pieces, and we're just going to try to roll it best we can into a nice little ball, and then we're going to put them into the baking dish. Well, I've got these all rolled out and put into the pan, and now I'm just going to cover them loosely with this plastic wrap, and then I'm going to put this dish towel on top, and I'm going to let them rise for about an hour. Well, I let these rise for about an hour, and they look fabulous. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a sharp knife, and I'm going to make a cross across the top of each bun. Now, if you have one of those French tools for scoring bread, a lame, you can certainly use that too. But I'm just going to use a sharp knife, and I'm just going to make a little cut like this into each one. And now I'm going to brush them with a little egg wash, and all this is 1 egg mixed with some water, about a tablespoon of water. Well, I've got the buns all brushed with the egg wash, and now I'm going to put them in the oven at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. They're going to take approximately 18 minutes. Everyone's oven's different, so I recommend that you check them at about 15 minutes. What you're looking for is that they're very, very golden brown on top. Now this is the juice that I set aside from the 2 oranges that I zested to add the zest into the batter. And what I've done is add a sort of a heaping rounded teaspoon of honey. It's not an exact science. And I've added it to this orange juice. And now I'm going to bring it up to a boil on the stove and let it just reduce a little. And when the buns come out of the oven, I'm going to use this as a glaze. Look at this glorious golden brown hot cross buns. They took exactly 18 minutes. And now what we're going to do, while they're hot, I've got the glaze, and what I did was that orange juice and honey that I had in here, I brought it to a boil and then put it down to a simmer, and I reduced it by about half, and now I'm going to brush it with this sticky sweet glaze. I brushed the buns with this sticky sweet glaze. Ah, it's going to be delicious. And I'm using one of these silicone brushes because this is so sticky that the one that I use for the egg wash is good for that, but with these sticky glazes, these silicone brushes work terrific. Oh, these are just going to be luscious. And then once I get all this glaze on, then we will put the piping on to make the cross. Well, they're all covered with the glaze now. I'm going to let them cool, and I'm going to make the piping, as I mentioned, which is just a little powdered sugar, Some of you may know it as icing sugar, and I'm just going to take some of that, mix it with a little, you can mix it with a little water, a little milk, just to thin it. We'll put it in a piping bag, and then we'll make our crosses across the top. Now, that said, I just want to mention that what some people do is before they put these in the oven, after they score them, they will make a paste of flour, water, maybe a little oil, and they'll put that in a piping bag and they'll pipe that across the top of all the buns. So they come out baked with the cross on. It's just a cross made of flour and water and a little oil. And then if you want, you can put the icing cross on top of it for a little added sweetness, or just leave it plain like that with the flour and water cross. So I just wanted to let you know that there are some options that you can do. But I do enjoy the little bit of sweet icing that we'll put on the top. Well, I've let these cool completely, and now I've made the piping icing, and all it is a half a cup of powdered sugar, or also known as icing sugar, and I added a tablespoon of water, and this is organic sugar, so it's not going to be super white, but it goes well with the sourdough. So all I'm going to do is, if you have a piping bag, great. This is just a plastic bag, and I'm just going to cut a little tip here at the bottom, and then we'll get ready to pipe on the crosses. And here we go, just across each one, just like that. Perfect. And then another one, and we'll just keep going across each one. Well, I'm not a pastry chef, but I like to say perfect for homemade, and I tell myself perfect as I'm piping it because it gives me confidence, but I think they came out lovely. And now for the taste test, the most important part. So I'm going to cut one out, and I'll open it up, and we'll see how it looks inside. Well, this just looks wonderful inside, and the aroma, oh, the spices are just wonderful. Well, let's cut it in half. Look at this crumb. I'm so happy with how these turned out. Well, half for you and half for me, and between us two, goodwill shall be. And I'll take a bite into my half. Mmm. Mmm. Oh, the flavor and the texture. It's so light, so light. Look at this, so light and fluffy, and yet the spices, oh, you can taste the cinnamon, the nutmeg, everything. Oh, it's just delicious. I hope you'll make these. Well, this is a wonderful bread to make, and it looks very festive when it's finished, and it's something that my mother always had on our Easter dinner table. The ingredients that you're going to need are very simple. The first thing you're going to want to start with is a half a cup of water and a tablespoon of sugar. This is just organic white cane sugar. And then you're going to need 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast. This is just active dry yeast. If you buy it in the little packages at the grocery store, it's just 1 package. And then you're also going to need a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and you're going to need a teaspoon of salt. This is unrefined sea salt. And you're going to need 3 eggs. And in here, what I've got is one stick of butter, which is a half a cup of butter. So 1 stick of butter and a half a cup of milk. And I've just warmed it so that the butter and the milk are the butter is melted into the milk, and I've let it cool to room temperature. And the final ingredient that you're going to need is 4 1/2 to about 5 cups of flour. And I want to talk about the flour. Now, you can certainly use all-purpose flour in this recipe, but if you want to make it more nutritious, you may want to try whole wheat. Now, whole wheat, 100% whole wheat, will make the bread a little denser. But what I like to use is this white whole wheat flour, and I'm able to find this right at my grocery store. It's becoming more popular. Now, this is 100% whole wheat, but it's made from white hard wheat as opposed to red hard wheat, which is just this. Normally, you'll see it at the grocery store just labeled whole wheat flour, but they're both 100% whole wheat. The only difference is this is made from red hard wheat, and this is made from white hard wheat. And it's lighter in color, lighter in flavor, and it also creates a final product that's lighter in texture. So it's perfect for baking breads, especially if you're new to whole wheat and you want to introduce whole grains to your family, but you want to create a bread that's a little lighter and less dense than it would be using the hard red wheat, the traditional 100% whole wheat. But this is also 100% whole wheat, so it's really the best of both worlds. Now for your half cup of water, you want this to be at 110 degrees. Now don't worry if you don't have a thermometer to check it exactly. Basically, it's just very, very mildly warm. You don't want it to be hot, because if it's hot, it can kill the yeast, which we're going to add to this water. Now, if you're worried like, oh, is it warm enough? Is it cool? Whatever. Don't worry. It's better to err on the side of it being too cool than too warm. It'll just take a little longer for the yeast to wake up. So don't worry if you don't have a thermometer. Just have water that you feel is basically room temperature, and then add your yeast into that and you'll be fine. And we're just going to add this tablespoon of sugar into the water, and I'm just going to give this a little mix. This will give the yeast something to eat as it wakes up. And now we'll go ahead and add in our 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast. And I'm just going to give this a little stir, and then we're going to let it sit for about 5 minutes while the yeast wakes up. Now I'm going to be using my electric mixer, but you can certainly do this by hand. I've just put on the whisk attachment, and I'm going to put the 3 eggs into the bowl, and then I'm going to add, we need one more ingredient, 2/3 of a cup of sugar, and this is just white organic cane sugar. And I'm going to go ahead and add that in, get that all in there. And then what we're going to do is just mix this together until it's well mixed together. That just took about 30 seconds to mix up well together. And now I'm going to add in the butter and milk mixture, and we're going to add in everything else as well except the salt and the flour. We're going to put in the vanilla, and we're going to put in the yeast. And now we just want to mix all of this together until it's well combined. Well, that just took about another 30 seconds. Now I'm going to remove the whisk attachment, and I'm going to put on the dough hook. Now we're going to start adding the flour. We'll start by adding a cup at a time. And now I'm going to put in my 3rd cup. I've got 2 cups in there, and I'll put in that 3rd cup, and then we'll send it for a whisk again. Well, I've got 4 cups of flour in there, and now I'm going to put in a 1/2 cup. So that's why we have about 4 1/2 to 5 cups of flour, because we'll put in this 1/2 cup, which will make 4 1/2 cups of flour in there, and then we'll start to see if the dough comes together and starts to form a nice ball in the mixer, or if you're mixing this by hand, if it's starting to come together. Then we'll know how much of the rest of the flour we're going to need. Now this is still quite sticky, if you can see this. The dough is still quite sticky. So I'm going to add in about 1/8 of a cup. I'm just going to take it slow, and once it completely pulls away from the bowl, I'll know we've put enough flour in there. Now that extra 1/8 of cup of flour was perfect. As you'll see, the dough has all pulled away from the bowl, and it's no longer sticky. You can touch it and you can pull your finger away from it without it sticking to it. Now I'm going to go ahead and add in the salt right on top there, and I'm going to knead this for about 5 minutes until it looks like a nice smooth dough. Now if you're doing this by hand, maybe about 10 minutes. Now when it comes to knowing if you've kneaded your bread dough long enough, you may have heard something that's referred to as the window pane test. Now I have not kneaded this for 5 minutes yet, and it may even need a bit longer than that, but after just a few minutes, I wanted to show you an example of what the window pane test is and how it's not going to work right now because this hasn't been kneaded enough. But if you're new to baking, this will kind of help you understand what people are talking about. You want to take about a golf ball size piece of dough. It's not an exact science, so don't worry about it. You want to make it into a ball, and then you want to press it into your hands so that you get a flat disc. Then you want to start to pull this apart, and you want to get it to the point where it's thin enough that you can see through. And now I want to say something about that when it comes to baking with whole grains, but for now I just want to show you. See, as we're trying to pull it apart to make it thin enough that we can see through it, it's starting to tear. Can you see that? See, it's got a hole in it. That tells you your dough has not been kneaded long enough. When you start to see those tears, you just have to go back and knead some more, whether you're kneading it in a machine or by hand. Now, that said, the window pane test means that, say this was kneaded enough and you flattened it into a disc and you pulled it apart and it didn't tear, that you could pull it apart nicely without getting these rips, and you could keep pulling it and pulling it and pulling it. And I'll show you when this is all done, to the point where it was so thin you could actually hold it up to your eye and see through it. Now, if you're using all-purpose flour, that's an easy test. However, it's not as easy when you're using whole grain flour, which, as you know, that's most of what I use most of the time. But you will be able to see some light penetrating through it. And that's probably a good enough test. But to actually be able to see through it when you're using whole grain flour can be a little more difficult. So I just want you to know that. So when people are talking about the window pane test, it may not 100% apply to whole grains. So I've kneaded this for about 5 minutes. I've taken out a little ball of dough, flattened it in my hand, and now I want to show you, see, we can pull it apart without ripping it. And I think that is perfect. I think it's been kneaded enough. And you'll start to see it'll start to get thinner and thinner the more you pull, but it won't rip. And then, as I said, if you're using all-purpose flour, you'll get to the point where you can keep pulling this apart, where you'll actually be able to look through it. But it is a little tougher with whole grains. But as long as you can start to pull it apart and it's not ripping and you can hold it up and you can see light coming through it, chances are you've kneaded it enough. Now you just get your dough out of your mixer or up off your board if you're kneading by hand, and we're going to put it right into a bowl. Here, a large bowl that I've greased with some olive oil. You can use whatever oil you have on hand. We're just going to put that right down, turn it around a little bit, and we're going to flip it over to make sure the whole bowl gets nicely greased with the oil. And then I'm going to cover this with some plastic wrap. And then I'm going to put a dish towel on top to keep it warm and leave it in a warm place for about an hour to rise. Well, I let this dough rise, and I just want to explain a few things to you about the rising process. Now, you may hear people say, well, let it double in bulk. Let it rise for about an hour or until it's double in bulk or double in size or whatever the case may be. And that can be kind of difficult to figure out unless you had it in some sort of cylinder where you had something marked and then you could see exactly when it had doubled in bulk or, you know, something like that. Sometimes you see buckets like that. But if you're just a home cook and you're doing this in a bowl, to try to figure out double in bulk can be challenging. A better test to determine if your bread dough has risen enough is called the finger poke test. Very scientific. But what you do is right about the time that the recipe says that the dough should have doubled in bulk, which in our case for this recipe, it's about an hour. Now, it can even take up to an hour and a half, depending on the temperature in your home, the weather outside, so on and so forth. But if the recipe says about an hour, at that time, what you want to do is take 2 fingers and just poke them right into your dough. If they disappear, it's not proofed enough. If you put your fingers in and it just stays exactly like that, you poke them in deep and the holes stay deep like that, you've overproofed it. However, if you put them in and it comes and you can bring your fingers out and the holes kind of ease up about halfway back, it's perfect. It's proofed perfect and you're ready and done. Now, it may be a little hard to see on camera, but I took a picture and I'll insert it and hopefully you can see what I'm talking about. But just to review, if you put them in and it just collapses and closes up, you've underproofed it. If you put your fingers in and they stay and the holes stay exactly looking like what it looks like when you take your fingers out, then it's overproofed. But if you put it in and they kind of ease back slowly, it's perfect. Now, don't worry if you overproofed it. If you put your fingers in and you pull them out and nothing happens, the holes just stay like that deep, what you've inserted your fingers into, It's not the end of the world. Still bake the bread. What's going to happen is your rise in the oven is probably going to be about 20% less than what it would be if it were proofed perfectly. But don't throw it out, don't waste it, just bake it. It will be a little denser, but it's not the end of the world, and some people may not even be able to tell. Well, now what we'll do is we're just going to punch this down, and we're going to put this onto our this board. I'm going to flour it, and I'll show you what we do next. Alrighty, now what we want to do is cut this ball of dough into 4 pieces. Now, if you have a scale, you'll be able to get it perfect, but we're just going to be old school here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take each of these pieces and we're just going to roll them out until we get them into a piece about 20 inches or so long. Well, once you get them rolled out, all you're going to do, you're going to take 2 of the pieces that you've rolled out, you're going to set the other 2 aside, you're just going to pinch 2 ends together like this, and then basically all you're going to do is just braid it. Just like that, nothing fancy. And then when you get to the end of the braid, you're just going to hold it together, you're going to bring it all around like this. You can see that. And then we're just going to pinch these ends together until they stay together. Next, what you'll want to do is get a baking sheet, and you can grease the baking sheet and then put your braid right onto that, or for easy cleanup, which is what I like, I put down a piece of parchment paper and then I grease the parchment paper. Then we're going to take our braid and we're just going to put it right down onto the greased parchment paper. And if you don't have one of these, it comes in so handy for this job. Certainly you could pick it up and you would get it on. I've done that in the past, but I got this recently and I just love it. It's a great cake lifter and all. And so look around for this. You often can find them in the baking aisle at your grocery store. But I'll also put a link in the description below if you're looking for one. They're just terrific. They're just so handy for so many different baking tasks. But in any event, okay, now what we're going to do is I'm going to cover this with a piece of plastic and a dish towel, and I'm just going to leave it for about 45 minutes to rest and rise a little, and then I'll show you the next part, which is the fun part, where we put the colored eggs inside. Well, this is rested for 45 minutes. It looks perfect. And the other 2 pieces of dough, I did the same exact thing. Rolled them out, pinched 2 ends together, made a braid. And so I've got 2 baking sheets, each with one of these braids on it. Now, the fun part. Over in my plastic bin here, I have 6 colored eggs. They're raw because they're going to cook while, because we're going to put them into the bread. And I've got 3 for this braid and 3 for the other braid. So I'm going to pick some colors now. I'm going to be very careful with them. And you just nestle them in best you can in between the places, where you braided it. And I'll put orange. This is my husband's favorite color, orange. So I'll put an orange one in and just nestle that in. The bread's going to bake up right around it, so don't worry. Perfect. And now let's see. How about green? Alrighty, and I'll put a green one right in here and nestle that right in there. Now we're going to take a little egg wash, and this is just 1 egg mixed with a tablespoon of water, and I'm just going to brush the dough. This is going to help make everything look nice and golden brown. And then next we do the sprinkles. We'll put all the colored sprinkles around. They're flying everywhere. But I like to be generous and give it a lot of lovely color. Oh, this is just going to be adorable. Perfect. Alrighty, now we're going to pop this in a 350-degree oven. That's 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's going to bake for about 30 minutes. Well, I just took it out of the oven. It took exactly 30 minutes, and look at this glorious Easter bread, this glorious Italian Easter bread. Well, I'm going to put this on a cooling rack. We'll let it cool a little bit, and then we'll slice into it. Well, I let this cool for a bit and put it on my cake plate. And now we'll have to cut into it and see how it looks. Oh, it's just glorious. It's still warm, but I can't wait. So we'll just go ahead and cut into it. And listen, I don't know if you can hear this. It's beautiful. Alrighty, here we go. And now, let me cut a part here where this beautiful brown crust, golden brown. Oh, look at how lovely this came. See this white whole wheat? It just is light in color, texture, and I'm confident flavor. Look at this. And I also want to just sort of pull it apart in the middle here so you can see. Look at this. Look at how beautiful this is. Well, I'm going to give this a taste. I'm going to taste this part with this beautiful golden brown top. Mmm. Delicious. Oh, it's light and fluffy and with just a hint of sweetness and this beautiful crust. Just delightful. I hope you'll make this and put it on your Easter dinner table. Now, if you'd like more family favorite baking traditions, be sure to click on this video over here where I have a full playlist of all my favorite baking treats for holidays, as well as other recipes too. And I'll see you over there in my Texas Hill Country Kitchen. Love and God bless.